Hello and welcome to my presentation. My name's Daniel Lee. My presentation is called Style Agnosticism in Contemporary Popular Music Education, and I'll be looking at the topics of equity of access and cultural propagation. Now here's a question that has been asked since the earliest days of what we now call popular music, and it's still being asked. My PhD at the University of Tasmania investigated the curriculum content and pedagogical practices in Australian contemporary and popular music Bachelor Degree, Australian Qualifications Framework Level 7 courses. The aim of the study was to ascertain influence of course designs on the voices of graduates in educational music communities and their performance practices. The communities in question exist in online and offline environments, and local, glocal and global spaces are inhabited by students and alumni of the courses under examination, as well as other musicians not necessarily affiliated with higher education in Australia. These communities act as both a community of practice, as described by Wenger, and as artist networks. The study found issues relating to deliberate ambiguous definitions of popular music, leading to issues of equity of access to higher education and cultural propagation. Data were collected from 3 sources, from surveys and industry documents, as well as interviews. 25 courses were identified in which a student could select a major in contemporary or popular music performance with the guitar as their primary instrument. At the time of data collection, Semester 1 2018, 17 universities, 3 TAFE colleges and 5 private institutions offered courses fitting the scope of the study. The data corpus was analysed using the procedures of Inductive Thematic Analysis as described by Brown and Clark, Sarantakos and Bryman, and produced 5 themes. Be yourself. Students are encouraged to develop their own voice. Jazz symbiosis. Many courses incorporate jazz content and associated pedagogical practices. Global spectra. The internet has a profound influence on both music and education, breaking down geographical boundaries. Vast array. Among the 25 courses examined, diverse curriculum designs and content were observed. And Style Agnostic. This is the theme that I'll be talking about today. Defining contemporary popular music was found to be difficult. Some course designers have embraced this difficulty and incorporate undefined genre boundaries into the course curricula. Now a little bit of background. At the beginning of the current century, 8 Australian universities offered bachelor degree courses in popular music performance. By the time of data collection, in Semester 1 2018, there were 25 courses being offered. With this growth in course numbers has come an increase in diversity of course design and an increasing range of student diversity in terms of cultural and pedagogical backgrounds. This has allowed a greater equity of access to higher music education for a broad cohort of prospective students, and also encouraged musics from a more diverse cultural backgrounds to be studied in Australian higher education. Now a quick look at the literature. First of all, around defining contemporary popular music. Authors discussing contemporary popular music have a history of experiencing difficulty in defining the genre, as exemplified here by Eliot's statement. The term contemporary music generally refers to recent compositions that do not adhere to standard musical conventions and is often used within the context of Western art music. However, an Australian parliamentary report on the music industry applied the term to rock music, causing considerable confusion. In attempting to define popular music, the commercial inclination of the music is typically a major factor. Schucker equated the term popular with commercial cultural forms of entertainment and regarded markets as an inescapable feature of popular culture. Music Australia, a national umbrella body, in their 2016 National Contemporary Music Plan offered the following definition, and King noted difficulties in defining the genre in its earliest days. There is an emerging notion in the literature of genre ambiguity in younger music consumers. The introduction of the internet, bringing new advances in access and portability of music, has continued to alter youth's relationship with music. Melissa Advief observed young people are now categorising music with a bottom-up strategy, using descriptors in place of commercially imposed genres. These descriptors are extremely personal. They are self-reflectively developed and are an extension of each individual's identity. This new method of musical organisation is called a folksonomy, a type of classification that is created by the users. Descriptors used by participants in ADVIF study include dark, awesome, catchy, cute, love it, sexy, brutal, guilty pleasure, and what the hell happened to my music taste? ADVIF found online marketing is a factor in recategorization of music by today's youth. This phenomenon is challenging the ontology of music, encouraging a more subjective experience to define what music is for each individual. On the topic of equity of access, Hanan claimed the development of popular music courses has relieved an equity of access issue, allowing self-taught popular music students the same opportunities of higher education as privately taught classical students. The more courses being offered, the greater the commercial competition between education providers. This competition is significant culturally, sociologically and economically, and particularly significant when considering the potential for international student markets in Australia. It also provides greater equity of access to tertiary music education by offering students from diverse backgrounds access to educational designs that may better suit them as individuals. In a discussion regarding the notion of cultural sustainability, Titan constructed a list of elements that may contribute to sustainability. His list included the circulation of music, the transmission of music through education, musical rights and ownership, the internal strength of music cultures, the roles of community and cultural heritage. He discusses ideas around preservation and revivification and concludes living heritage masterpieces are best maintained by managing the cultural soil surrounding them. Alcheri examined the history of music teaching in Ghanaian schools and found colonial music was dominating music education programs and recommended development of a multicultural music program with African music being the dominant feature for the purposes of cultural revivification. Development of music education programs with the specific intent of cultural maintenance have also been undertaken in Malaysia, Grenada and Thailand. Other research into pedagogical approaches in popular music include the concept of rejecting Latin musical terminologies and adopting vernacular language, the place of informal learning practices in conservatoires, and overcoming the difficulties of cultural specificity. Lebler made comparisons between popular music higher education and the traditional models used in jazz and classical music education. He observed students are enabled to develop their learning abilities in the context of creating the music that is an expression of their personal cultures. He noticed that this encouraged a sense of ownership in the students of the educational practices. Klopper strongly encouraged Australian universities to embrace the global networking opportunities that online education offers. His stance is one of encouraging a cultural exchange between students. He feels for educators to be effective, they need a positive attitude toward interculturalism, and for institutions to remain competitive, that they must engage with emerging technologies. Okay, on to the findings. First of all, defining CPM and genre ambiguity. A significant finding of the study was that many courses deliberately defied genre boundaries in favour of intentional approach to increasing diversity and inclusivity. Another significant observation was no universally consistent definition of genre boundaries for popular music in higher education courses exists in the data. Matt noted a lack of genre definition in his course. Some institutions and individual educators are altering their pedagogical approaches and curriculum design to account for the phenomenon regarding genre ambiguity in the 21st century, and in particular among younger generations native to communications technology. The contemporary component of popular music, or contemporary popular music, is clearly defined in only a few cases. At Barry's institution, they defined contemporary as music that has been created in the last 5 years. However, there was generally some ambiguity surrounding the word contemporary. Students in the TAFE Queensland course are expected to identify defining characteristics of contemporary music. Defining popular music was also found to be difficult by the participant cohort. Samantha asked the question, well, what even is popular music? Many of the courses feature curricula and assessment that relate to students' original compositions, including quota requirements in recitals. 2 of the courses were found to concentrate entirely on the students' original compositions. This begs the question, can students' original compositions, which deliberately employ popular music aesthetics, be actually described as popular music? And equity. One benefit, and in some cases a reason for an agnostic approach to genre, is a greater equity of access to higher education in music for students from non-traditional backgrounds and students with broader approaches to career trajectories. Students who have not had formal training in classical or jazz music, often students who are self-taught, as is common in popular music, may now have access to higher education through courses accepting a diverse concept in musical content. Prospective students who do not wish to follow conventional postgraduate pathways for music students may also find such courses more inviting. Diversity was found in the performance repertoire, the student cohort, and genre definitions. Samantha said, when I think about the sorts of repertoire our performers perform in their assessments and their recitals and things, it really is quite a mixed bag. Educator Survey Respondent 85 observed the cohort is so diverse. You've got people that are totally focused on death metal, you've got people that like the blues, there's a kind of ritzy pop thing, there's a huge range involved. Barry stated, one of the challenges we face within our music program is we don't define ourselves via a genre. We've defined the program as a contemporary music program. We loosely define that as music that's happening now. Alita stated her purpose for being style agnostic. She has observed the majority of her students engage with music education in some manner after graduating. She, therefore, attempts to give them a broad experience to improve their scope as educators. Institutions that recognise a large percentage of their graduates go on to become educators in some form, either private tutors or classroom teachers, etc., typically after further studies, encourage their students to have a more diverse knowledge and skill set than is necessary for a career as an instrumental soloist. Another purpose of diversity found in the data corpus was to prepare students for a portfolio career in music, combining a diverse range of income streams. Content diversity was seen by one student as a potential remedy for the overabundant jazz content he had observed in the other courses on offer. This influenced his decision-making process when choosing which course to enrol. His choice involved moving interstate to study the appropriate course. Content diversity was also seen as a key component in preparing students for community involvement both during the course and post-graduation. Bruce claimed expanding a student's idea of what musicality can mean will enable them to be a better functioning part of broader musical communities. Diversity in skill sets, including skills not directly related to musical performance but broader industry skills, was also a topic common in the data. These skill sets include sound engineering, recording, and staging. Another advantage of content diversity expressed in the data is the broader range of options available to graduates for further study. And on to culture. The prominence of autonomy in Australian popular music courses may be a response to or a result of the prominence of individuality in Australian popular music culture. In the late 1960s and early 70s, there was a push in the arts industry to create more Australian material. With a governmental push toward cultural nationalism, there was a swell of interest in Australian film, theatre, visual arts and music. Various national agencies, including the Visual Arts Board of the Australia Council, the International Cultural Corporation of Australia Council, the Experimental Film and Television Fund, the Australian Film Institute and the Australian Film Commission were all engaged with the task of promoting Australian arts internationally. Data suggests educators in the Australian tertiary institutions, in popular music courses in particular, are aware of this period of cultural identity development in Australia's history. Participants in this study, however, also found it was very difficult to define Australian popular music or any distinct Australianisms within the popular music genre. One of the graduate outcomes found in popular music unit descriptors from the Australian National University expects students to be able to identify Australian musical traits and expressions. However, no data were found explaining what these traits and expressions might actually be. The concept of being oneself and developing a unique voice as a musician was very prominent in the data corpus. Reference to it was found in all data sets, from all participant strata and from all types of institution. It was a consistent theme across the courses investigated and illustrates the ways in which Australian popular music courses are perpetuating an Australian cultural pattern, exemplified by the contemporary rock bands of the 1970s. Topics relating to globalism were found in the survey responses and subsequently influenced the interview questions which investigated it further. One respondent inferred that the Australian voice is indeed invisible in the global context. Participants noted that musical microcultures are no longer geographically located since the development of online communications technologies. Participants also noted the sense of community and interconnectedness has influenced the sense of genre. Curricular content has been steered towards examining this phenomenon, including historical and cultural perspectives. The term diversity was found to be used by some participants in reference to student diversity and also future audiences whom the graduates may encounter. So what do all these findings mean? The theme Style Agnostic reports that data supports the notion that defining contemporary popular music is difficult, including within Australian popular music courses. Some course designers have embraced this difficulty and incorporated undefined genre boundaries into the course curricula. A style agnostic approach to course content may be an effort to not alienate prospective students who may have specific tastes from enrolling in the course. One difficulty in defining popular music is that it overlaps with the similar difficulty in defining Australian music and in describing Australian popular music performance style idioms. In some cases, each educator within institutions may have their own perspective on the definition and boundaries of the aesthetic style and cultural influence of their course encompasses. Students were encouraged to find and develop their own voice. This level of student autonomy has resulted in a diverse graduate cohort. This has made it all the more difficult to identify or define iconic Australian popular music performance styles, other than to add to pre-existing concept of individualism. This was an inherent concept in the Australian popular music industry. By engaging with this concept of style agnosticism, institutions are helping to maintain this aspect of the Australian voice. The inclusion of jazz content and world music and associated pedagogies has resulted in students graduating with broader understandings of performance styles and musical concepts. This will inevitably agnosticize the genre identity markers in their own performance style. Graduates exposed to a style agnostic perspective who engage in teaching as an income stream will inevitably pass on this perspective to their students, thus further promulgating it. For example, Alita claimed deliberately engaging with a range of styles in order to generate a broad musical perspective will help her graduates influence their communities holistically rather than through a narrow musical spectrum. Furthermore, adopting world music influences into their own performance styles, graduates of these courses will inherently, in turn, also influence the communities with which they interact. These can be local live music communities where the students may perform music with subtle world music influences or inflections. Some graduates have deliberately embraced this to enhance their voice. Some may not even be aware of this that it has influenced their playing style more subtly simply through exposure. It may also impact their interactions with online communities where they may upload recordings or interact in discussion groups regarding musical topics. Definitions of popular music are further challenged by courses that concentrate solely on students' own original compositions. In these cases, popular music genre idioms are expected to be employed in the compositions. However, the compositions themselves are not popular music per se. The course designs are deliberately ambiguous to enable the incorporation of the latest developments and trends in the global popular music industry. Thus, students can incorporate the most contemporary elements of popular music into their own compositions. In this way, the students' products engage with popular music aesthetics without actually being popular music. The development of popular music courses has relieved an equity of access issue, allowing self-taught popular music students the same opportunities of higher education as privately taught classical and jazz students. The wide range of course designs developed by the Australian tertiary popular music sector provides prospective students with a vast array of options, particularly if they don't wish to undertake music education in a conservatoire setting. There is now a competitive market in tertiary music education. This competition is significant culturally, socially and economically, and particularly significant when considering the potential for international student markets in Australia. Also, with many options and a large number of institutions offering popular music education at this level, there are implications for the future prospects of music education more broadly. This includes fresh vibrancy among popular music education across primary and secondary education sectors, as graduates of these courses frequently now engage with education as part of their portfolio careers. This has the potential to encourage Australian popular music students to maximally explore their own voice and in so doing engage with a range of existing cultural heritage and simultaneously develop new cultural capital. This demonstrates UNESCO's second aim for arts education, to develop individual capabilities. Australian popular music is acknowledged as being a blended style with influence from international sources. The inclusion of curricular material from a variety of sources, both international and Australian, helps to continue this aspect of Australia's national aesthetic. In this way, Australian popular music courses are continuing the development of Australian cultural capital rather than stagnating or perpetuating a pre-existing heritage only by including previous iconic Australian material. The progressive development of a multi-sourced influence on the Australian voice is also enhanced by encouraging students to compose music and find their own voice. By not attempting to set genre boundaries, the Australian music scene, at least through Australian popular music course graduates, has the potential to explore new musics and develop unique local, glocal and global aesthetics. This attitude is in keeping with Australian popular music cultural heritage and could have significant consequences in the future for the global perspective of the Australian voice in popular music by challenging current perceptions of an Australian voice. A more holistic approach to genre in popular music higher education may, in the future, develop to incorporate a wider range of styles that are more inclusive of the broader understanding of an Australian voice. This connects with UNESCO's fourth aim of arts education, to promote the expression of cultural diversity, and continues an observed practice within Australian popular music. This also may have implications for the future international student market. So in conclusion, data indicate an overarching concept informing the findings of this research. This can be summarised in this following sentence. Australian tertiary institutions delivering popular music courses have engaged with an eclectic array of pedagogical practices in order to maximise student agency and included a broad, globally informed classification of genre. Thanks for listening.